beautiful people. This is your host, Demira Virgil, and this is Kweenduhm Conversations Podcast. Today, I have an amazing guest. Her name is Krista Zaft. Let me read a little of her bio. She's absolutely amazing. Krista Zaft is the host of the Becoming Sound podcast based on adult children of alcoholism and dysfunction. She raises awareness and hope for those who have been affected in some way by substance abuse or mental health conditions. She is an integrative life and wellness coach, passionate about witnessing women realize they hold the power within to change their current conditions and stuck patterns. With the right tools, sounds, practices, and heart centered support, she guides her clients towards creating a life they truly love. Again, Krista Zaft. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm so excited to hear about your journey. Let's just take it back to the very beginning. How did you get into wanting to empower women and just break generational curses and trauma?
I think it started a couple years ago. I've been on a healing journey for at least 15 years.
Oh,
When I started to realize my own patterns and my own dysfunctional behavior within my family system, and it was spilling over into my kids, and it was like a wake-up call. And I realized, okay, I'm repeating the same stuff, and it's almost like I felt a little crazy inside my own head. I didn't know where these behaviors came from. I didn't really recognize the patterns as they were. And it wasn't until my adult son was going through his own addiction. And as a parent, that is absolutely devastating because you're watching your child self-destruct in front of you. And I just felt so out of control. I was very codependent with him. I didn't realize I was enabling and perpetuating the situation. And one day I saw him, and it was like he was fading away in front of me. He was literally, I'd say, on death's doorstep. He wasn't far off. And we didn't live together. And of course, he's an adult, and I hadn't seen him for a while. And something snapped inside me. I knew he had huge issues, and I was ignoring them. I was trying to do all the things he needed me to do and trying to keep his head above water. And I knew that something had to change. And it was like a wake up call. So we did an intervention and we got him some help. And he went to a recovery place, a little bit unwilling, but we did get him there. And I think he was ready. And when I watched him transform, when I watched him, the language and the words, and I saw him a month after he started, and it was like meeting my adult son for the first time. I really had not heard or seen him in that capacity ever in his life. I only knew him as an adult. I only knew him struggling and as an addict. And so it was very inspiring to see him go through those changes and find his way spiritually and back to himself. And his recovery process is really what started me to start empowering myself. I knew I needed help too, and I needed to figure out where my kind of default patterns were. And I needed to figure out how to recognize those. And I started actually in Al Anon. I kept up with a lot of the healing practices I had been doing, but I started in Al Anon, and I was pretty resistant at first. I knew I needed help, but when I got there, there was a lot of talk of God, and I was terrified. I had lost my touch with my spirituality for quite some time. I think when you're a child and you grow up in a home where there's a lot of chaos and dysfunction, you stop believing because your sense of belief, it just doesn't exist anymore. You don't know what's happening day to day. You don't know what you're going to walk in on in any given moment. And so that belief in something higher than yourself, it just doesn't seem like anyone's there to save you. And as a kid, that's a tough concept to understand. So I think that my faith and my belief had dwindled over the years. And when I watched my son go through this, I realized I had been so disconnected with myself. And I believe that all the healing stuff that I had done, all the different modalities in the previous years, when I found that connection in Al Anon and I started to reconnect with myself, a higher power, that's when I realized, wow, what kind of world. There's so many women and men too, but a lot of women just living in this cycle of self sabotage and dysfunction within their own minds and within their own life. And they just don't know how to break free of that. And you go through these patterns and it just becomes second nature and you forget where they came from. So I had to really dig deep and figure out where all this started and how I got there. And I had done a little bit of inner child work before. And I think I was more ready to do that when I was a lot more open. So I had taken a course to become a life coach, an integrative life coach. And I had been in the fitness and health industry for years. I had taught fitness, I was a personal trainer, I have nutrition certifications, and I loved helping people. But there was just something keeping me stuck all the time. I was in my own way with something. I never let my business get to the next level because I was holding myself back. And a lot of these patterns were repeating.
Okay, let me ask you this. What is Al-Anon?
Al Anon is a support group for people who live with alcoholism. So
Okay.
the family members, spouses, children. Now, I also attended some ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunction. It's a support group, so community support. You can find them all over the world, basically, right? It's like AA. It's for family members, so it's a
Oh,
support
wow.
system.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, ladies, I will try to find those links and place those links in this episode because I know for a fact that there are going to be some women who are going to watch this podcast and they are dealing with family members that have some type of addiction. A lot of
yeah,
times we don't like to talk about it. A lot of times it's a family secret, and sometimes it has went on so long in so many different generations that it is just looked at as being normal. Dysfunction is not normal. There is
yeah,
nothing normal about it. There are a lot of women who deal with a lot of things. And let me just say this, Krista, it takes a
mhm,
lot of courage to get on here and to talk about having a son who had an addiction. A lot of times women are embarrassed, to be honest.
yeah,
And because they feel like there's judgment. Sometimes people feel like, what did you do? What did you not do because your son is doing this or your daughter's doing this? And this is the truth. I am a mother,
yeah,
I am a grandmother. I raise my children and they know right from wrong. They're grown. But once your child becomes grown, there's when they make mistakes and when they do different things in life. We all have our own roads, we all have our own journeys, we all have our own lessons to learn. But that does not, when they do things and they go left or either they go right, it is not a reflection of you that you were a bad mother, ladies.
exactly.
Sometimes things happen. Sometimes it's not their intention to get caught up the way they did. A lot of times it's peer pressures, it's social pressures, it's the circles they're in, wanting to fit in, wanting to be a part of things. So there are just different things that happen where sometimes this addiction takes place. It's not always because you are a bad parent or because you're a bad mother. So I just wanted to say that because a lot of times mothers feel guilt and it's I had to do something wrong. That doesn't necessarily mean that you've done something wrong because you're dealing with a child that has an addiction. They
Yeah,
just make a bad choice. So I just want to say that because a lot of times that's one of the reasons why women they don't want to talk about it. And it's good to talk about things, ladies. It's good to get these negative emotions and these hurtful emotions and whatever it is that is having you in a place of darkness or feeling defeated or just feeling helpless. It's good to find somebody you can trust. I can't just necessarily say therapy because some people don't have resources for therapy.
that's
Okay.
right.
But somebody that you can talk to release these emotions, ladies, somebody who has your best interest at heart without judgment. So let me ask you this.
Hmm.
Did you realize that your son had an addiction when he was younger, or do you feel like maybe he had been hiding it, or were there signs there but you chose to overlook it, or
Yeah, he did. His addiction was quite, I think it was probably a 10-year process.
mm,
And it started in his late teens. So probably 18, 19 years old was when it was really became a problem. He hid it very well. There was alcohol in our family. I grew up with an alcoholic father. I married into an alcoholic family. And I think sometimes the cycle, like you said, generational, it just keeps repeating. And so my son had witnessed that as well. And so there was alcohol around, and teenagers, they go out, they have fun with their friends, and it's just easy to hide. And as the years went on, I would talk to him and say, you might want to think about slowing down, or this seems to be a problem. Oh, no. And he just brushed it under the rug. And I think the more I said something, the further away he got. And that can happen. And so he got better at hiding it. And then I went into a denial. I was going through a lot of my own stuff and trying to navigate my own life, my own marriage that was breaking down. And so I was really wrapped up in a lot of my own pain and my own dealing with my own past trauma. And so I ignored it, and not on purpose. I think it just fell by the wayside. And as much as I wanted to address it with him, he covered it up so well that I didn't realize was a problem until later on. A few years went by and I started to notice signs. He was a little more withdrawn and a little more isolating. And I lived separately. His dad and I went through a divorce. And so that took a toll on the family as well. And he didn't live with me. And so that makes it easier to hide from me. And yeah, and so I think he did get clean and sober one time 4 years previous, and he chose not to go to recover, like into a recovery program. He thought he could do it himself. And I think the big denial for me was when he slipped back into it. And I thought, oh, he's just having a few drinks. And then that turned to he also used other substances. And I felt like he needed me. And as a mom, that's a really tough thing to navigate. It's hard to draw the line and use that tough love when they're not with you all the time. And he needed me all of a sudden too. And so I was there and I was talking to him and trying to do my own counseling with him, which I think worked sometimes and other times it didn't. There's too much of an emotional barrier there between us. And so there were signs in the later years. I fell into a pattern of being codependent with him. And I didn't see my own enabling behaviors until it was at a point where I snapped out of it. And that was when we got him help. And I was like, hey, this is crazy. And you're right. The stigma and the secrecy and the shame involved and the guilt involved as a parent, but also just the disease as a whole. It's so shrouded in secrecy, and yet it's everywhere. It's so normal in our society, yet it's so secret with families, and it's the behind the closed door kind of thing. You don't talk about it because it's embarrassing. And so when my son chose to get clean and we got him into that, I had it up to here with the whole secrecy. I'm like, this is enough. We need to talk about this or we will never heal as a family. And so I had to get everyone on board, and I started being very open with it. That's when I realized my own pain and trauma from my past and living with alcoholism. Nothing was ever going to heal if we were going to stay silent. And when he was going through recovery, we were very open with our family and our friends. And we weren't advertising it, but we were very open. If people asked me, I was very open. Say, my son has a problem and I'm so proud of him for getting help, but we need to talk about this. And some time went by and I did my own healing and went through some stuff. And I realized there were podcasts out there that were helping me, but there wasn't a lot of people talking about this. And I had a fantastic coach at the time, about 8 months ago. And I started realizing I needed to speak up about my own journey and about my son's journey and about the whole generational thing that I've been through. And that's why I started the podcast. I thought, if I never make a dime off of anything, I just want people to be seen and heard, and for people to be able to reach out and be part of a community where they can listen to stories where it's what's happening with them and their families. It's
Mhm.
so universal too. I know that the resources are hard when you don't have a lot of money to
Mhm.
get therapy and stuff like that. But there are community support groups out there that do not charge a dime. And so
Mhm.
you just have to find one in your area and reach out. And if you never say anything in that group and you just go sit, or you get on a Zoom and you don't have to show your face on camera, it's just hearing other people's experiences. The same thing as what you're doing, Demerit, is allowing people's voices to be heard. And if one person out there hears my story and
Mhm.
they're able to resonate with that, then that's a powerful thing. They don't feel so alone, because I felt very alone for so many years. And so I really just wanted to give a voice to people who were still hiding in the shadows.
Let me start by saying this. This is good because my mother was an alcoholic. And
Mm,
I mentioned this a few times in my podcast. My family was aware that she had a drinking problem, but when she drank, she was calm. She was in the house. She would put her music on. She would be in this dark, depressive state, and then she would just drink. And to this day, I'm really not sure exactly why she was drinking the way she was. I think I'm aware of maybe a couple things, but not everything, because she wouldn't really talk about it. She was very quiet. She didn't really show a lot of emotion. She never really had the energy to want to do anything. She was always in a dark place. My mom died when
mhm,
I was in my 30s, and I don't think I ever seen my mom happy, like my
mm,
whole life. I don't remember her just being happy. She was just always in this dark place. And I think that my family probably did not intervene because she wasn't a violent alcoholic, right? It was
mhm,
like she's grown, she's in her house, she's getting some beers or whatever she's drinking, she's listening to her music, smoking her cigarettes, she's not bothering anybody. But at the same time, she was raising a daughter, like she had a daughter in the house, and it was still dysfunction there. Even though she
yeah,
wasn't violent, she didn't curse me, never put her hands on me. But it was just the darkness when I came home, the depression when I came home, just never really having a mother who was happy, right?
mm,
So I didn't know what life looked like to have a mother who was thriving, who was happy, who was taking care of her business, who was working to where we could just go on trips and travel. She never owned a driver's license. She never drove a car. She couldn't read. So there was just a lot of things that she was probably depressed about. But just going to my family's houses and going to my aunties, and they were married and they lived in really nice houses and nice neighborhoods. And during that time, I was my mother's only child. She had a son when I was in the 12th grade. So it was just me and my mom. When she married an alcoholic, and they were married, I don't know, over 20 something years, I've never seen him sober a day in my life. He was drunk every day, all day. And if he could not get something to drink, he would get physically ill, right? His
mm,
body would just shut down. So
yeah,
he had to have alcohol. I never seen him sober. So that was the type of house that I was raised in. And I don't drink. If I drink, it would be like something sweet that I can't taste the alcohol, but I never cared for alcohol. And part of that is because like wine coolers, nothing. Because of watching my mom, I just have this thing when I'm around a lot of alcohol or people who drink and they're drunk, it just does something to me. I just don't want to be in those type of environments. But it was very difficult. And I'm saying this to say that mothers, if you say that you're a functional alcoholic, I'm just in my house drinking, I'm not bothering nobody. I'm just doing me. This is my house. I pay the bills. I don't mistreat my kids. I'm not hitting them. I cook dinner and this and that. When your child comes home and see you drinking in this dark place, it still affects them. It doesn't have to
yeah,
be hitting them. It doesn't have to be you being violent in the home or cursing. It can be you being in a corner, just being sweet, just being to yourself. But at the end of the day, ladies, it's still a dysfunction, right?
yeah.
If you have sisters, if you have cousins, if you have friends, your goddaughters, whoever, and you see them in the situations, you still need to talk to the parent to try to get them some help because that matters. There's different levels of dysfunction. It's not always abuse,
No,
right?
a lot of it can be emotional. It's just your parent is emotionally absent, and that's a form
Yes.
of abandonment.
Yeah,
And that's a tough thing for a young girl to be growing up without that.
yeah,
You need that connection, that emotional connection
yeah,
with your
yeah.
mother for sure. But
Yeah, just trying to understand why everybody's house was different than mine, right? I go to my
mm-hmm.
aunt's house, it's just peace and they got it going on over there. I go to my other auntie's house, I go to friend's house. You get in junior high and like high school, you spend a night over your friend's house and they would come spend a night at mine. It's now you can't spend a night over here. Or can we come to your house now? You can't spend a night over here. You can't come in and
Yes.
come over here and hang out with me because I didn't want them to see my mom in that
Yeah.
condition. So that's just something to think about, ladies. I feel like I did go through those things because there's a testimony inside of me and there's conversations that I can have with women just like I'm having with you when it comes to alcoholism. There's other people in my family that have drinking problems and have drug issues, and it can devastate the family. I think a lot of times people act like it's not there, like it's not happening. They just overlook situations just to be able to function, but this person is like dying inside. And that can be heartbreaking. I have people in my family have gotten help several times and they've been addicted to things over 30, 40 years and they're still battling and they're still trying to fight this addiction and it just gets a hold of them every time. It's every time they get out, they get worse.
Yeah.
So there's just different levels of things as
Mm-hmm.
women that we deal with, especially if we're the strong one, right? We're the strong mom, strong sister,
Yes.
strong auntie, strong best friend, and we try to be strong for everybody. But you have to realize that sometimes, just sometimes we need somebody to pour something into us too, ladies.
Yeah.
Um, so you make some really valid points, but I want to ask you this: for women who are dealing with, let's say, teenagers, maybe even junior high. I have a son that just graduated. Some of the stories he would tell me about some of the stuff those kids were doing was just blowing my mind to even be able to get access to some of the things they were doing. But what are some things, if you look back, and these are for the women who are just starting to experience and they think something might be going on, they're not sure, it could be, or they know something is going on, but it could be because their status, their jobs, their family name, just there's so many things that go into play. What are some things that you wish that you would have did different in the beginning?
I really wish I would have reached out and had a voice for myself earlier on. And I think there were people I could have reached out to that would have been open to listening. I was pretty scared and I had a lot of shame at that point, but I really wish I would have reached out. Now, when I was growing up with this and when I was young in my late teens, early 20s, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have, I'm aging myself, I know, but we didn't have the access to a lot of stuff that young kids have now. And there are so many resources out there. If they just reach out, they could find something that resonates with them. And had I had some of the resources that they have now, I think it would be a little easier to get over that fear of speaking up
Mhm.
and paying some attention to myself. A lot of self-care is what I would have done differently, is really being mindful of how I'm taking care of myself, setting some boundaries as well. When you
Mhm.
grow up with no boundaries or very loose boundaries in a house like that, or a very unpredictable situation, you lose your own boundaries too. And so setting some stronger boundaries with myself would have been really helpful in those informative years. And I think just reaching out and talking to someone, because I was really stuck in my throat a lot for a lot of years. I wanted to talk and I'd get this lump in my throat, like a physical sensation that I
Mhm.
just couldn't get past. And once I did get past that later on in years, I realized that this fear I had been sitting on for so long, it just started to flow. It's like cracking the seal. When
Mhm.
I finally got the courage to speak up about it,
Mhm.
I felt seen and heard, and from that person that I was talking to. And all of a sudden, it just wanted to pour out like a fountain. And the
Mhm.
relief I felt was huge. And
Mhm.
so I would encourage any young woman looking to find some peace or learn about themselves or create some more self-awareness about what's going on for them is just speak up with someone. Just
Mhm.
reach out to someone that you trust or find someone online that you trust. There's a lot of women talking about this stuff, like your podcast or mine or anything,
Mhm.
and we're all available to listen and to validate someone's feelings and say, hey, I see you, I hear you. And there are places you can go, there are people you can talk to start getting the help that you need and breaking some of those patterns.
And then I want to say this too, because this is important. So I've raised three children, okay?
Hmm.
There's a difference between being your children's mother and being their friend, okay? At some point, you have to realize that you're mother. I am mama. I'm not your friend. And when it comes to different situations, I'm going to put my foot down because I know what's best for you. And in some situations, you can be putting your foot down to actually save their lives. Some women are in fear of losing relationships with their children if they put their foot down.
Hmm.
And they're scared of there being a disconnect and them pushing away. There are a lot of reasons why sometimes we remain silent in certain situations, but you have to look at the overall picture, and you have to look at, if I don't step in, if I don't raise my voice to this situation, if I'm not open and honest and try to seek help, what is the end going to look like? What is this going to look like 5 years from now? What is this going to look like 10 years from now? Sometimes they may get upset because they don't understand. They're just
Yeah.
looking at the addiction and where they are now. But if you look at the overall picture, like, what do you have to lose by
Yeah.
speaking out to get your child help? Now, if I have to make a choice of I'm gonna be quiet because of, I don't know, my family or where we are within the community or just what people are going to say versus I'm going to speak out because this can save my child's life, because this can turn my child's life around, I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
If you are dealing with people and if you are in relationships and friendships and social circles with people, when you're honest about some of the things that your children are going through and they need help and they have an issue with that, then you're not around the right people to start with.
Yeah.
You're not in the right circles. You don't have the right tribe. You're not in the right village. Whatever the situation is, you're in the wrong circles anyway, because a real friend is going to support you and try to figure out how to get your child help.
That's right.
Your son has an addiction and you constantly, Tamara, I need help. I don't even know where to start. We're going to figure something out, right? I'm
Yeah.
coming up to your house. You're coming over mine. We're going to do brunch. We're going to do something. But we're going to put our heads together as two women that care about your child, and we're going to get help. That's real friendships,
Yeah.
right? If you're
And
not in those type of
mhm.
circles, then you're in the wrong circle to start, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes we have to be accountable for the circles that we keep and for the relationships that we have, ladies.
Yeah, it is. It takes a village. It really
It
does.
takes a village. It takes a village. And this is just so good because people are not talking about this for whatever reasons. They're not. This is just, there's a lot of silence. And then when you talk about generational things, I say it all the time. I feel in my heart that I am a generational curse breaker. Depending on who you
Hmm.
talk to, some people say generational trauma, some people say generational curses. But one day I just made an executive decision that dysfunction, it was going to stop with me. Not only my mom, but just different things in the family, that I was going to do something different. I love my mother with all my heart. She loved me the best she could, but I am the total opposite of her.
Yeah.
Everything about Demira, it is nothing like my mother. It doesn't make me proud to say that, because as grown up, we want to be just like our mothers. But when
Hmm.
I was young, I'm talking about maybe 7 or 8 years old, I remember speaking that over my life, that I was going to be different. I was going to have a different life, and I was little. So for the ladies who are going through situations, and you may be in households and your mother or your father or even sometimes your siblings or whoever it is within your family has this dysfunction, that does not mean that you have to be the next generation. It doesn't mean that because you're going through these things that you can't live your life and thrive, or that you can't break free from certain things. You have your own life. You can make your own decisions. And sometimes we don't, not sometimes, we don't have a choice to choose our families, right? We're born
Yeah,
into this family. We don't have a choice, but you do have a choice about the way you live your life.
that's right. And I truly believe when you say that, I truly believe that when you heal and you are that generational curse breaker,
Mhm.
you heal a lot of generations behind you. Not everyone could speak up for themselves or have the courage to do, especially the person who was affected by that disease and all the family members who suffer. When I look at my son today, he is about to have a baby.
Oh, wow.
And this baby will be the first in two families that will not know alcoholism or
Mhm.
addiction. And that is such a testament to how we can heal. And there are people in our family who have stopped drinking
Mhm.
because my son got clean, because
Mhm.
that's how much he meant to them. So when he has affected people behind him, and
Mhm.
that helps everyone to heal. It's not just about one person, but when
Mhm.
you have the courage to step up and speak up and heal yourself. And it's not just for the person who has the addiction. People
Mhm.
who live with addiction, this is a family disease, and
Mhm.
everyone is affected differently. So when I say that I'm in recovery, it is more of an emotional sobriety, an emotional recovery where I can heal my emotional patterns, my mental wounds, and I don't have to carry that forward. My grandchildren will never see those patterns from me, those old behavior patterns. And so this helps everyone heal. And when you speak up about it and you stop hiding it under the covers and closing the door on this and keeping it such a secretive thing in your family, everybody can start healing. It is not easy. It is not a linear road either. It has a roller coaster, it's up and down. But
Mhm.
if you keep moving forward and keep speaking up, eventually the people who are weren't willing to get on board at the beginning, they can just see some light for themselves. So
Mhm.
you do affect so many people around you.
Mhm.
And speaking up and being that generational, that person that breaks those chains, that's
Mhm.
huge. It's huge for you, for the person, but for the whole family and
Agree.
generations before that.
I agree. So, ladies, Krista, did you hear what Krista just said? It's not just about her son. Her son is about to have a baby, so she's going to have a grandchild. This is so important, ladies, because if you have children that have an addiction, right? You have a son, you can't just think about your son, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, your great grandchildren, or even your daughter. If your grandfather was an alcoholic or he had some addictions, and then you have your father, and then you have your uncles, or now it's your brothers, okay, but you have nieces and nephews, right? A lot of times things go on within families because nobody is talking about it.
That's right.
Nobody wants to talk about it. So many people get away with things because nobody is speaking life and exposing things that are in the dark, right? They're not speaking life to situations that are being hidden. It's just everybody in the family knows, everybody in the community knows that such and such family, all of them like that, all the boys like that, all the girls like that, everybody like that, everybody know the way they are. And that's not okay. But there are some families that are actually labeled for having these dysfunctions. You
Yeah.
have nieces, you have nephews, you have godchildren, you have younger people within the family. At some point, who's going to stand up and say, this is enough?
Yeah.
Like it stops with me. And that is what breaking generational curses is. Sometimes people don't understand, what does that mean? Generational curses that are things, negative things, dysfunctional things that have went on through generations and generations that nobody is speaking about, and it just happens because that's just the way somebody is. Generational trauma. That is
Yeah.
what we're talking about. So it's just something to think about, ladies. It's not just about us. It's not just about our children. It's about the generations that are coming after us. This was such an amazing
Mhm.
episode, Krista. Thank you. If
You.
you had to give advice to the women, your younger self, what is something you would say to yourself to be able to get through the situations that you've had to overcome?
I think something I would tell myself is that you are braver than you think you are.
Mhm.
You have so much more light and goodness inside you, and you are worthy of healing, of finding peace within you, of just being seen and heard, that you matter. And there are a lot of younger women out there who think that, or they feel invisible and they think that they're not worthy and that they don't matter, that they don't have a voice. And they do. You don't have to go out and become a superstar, but your voice matters in your world. And if I could go back, I would have given my younger self just a boost of confidence. Find a way to ignite that confidence within you, and things will just become better for you.
I
It's
agree
healing.
100%. Okay. There are a lot more things I can say, but we're running out of time. This was just like
Okay.
probably one of my favorite episodes so far, Krista.
Thanks,
Um,
Tamara.
so let me start by saying this, ladies. I hope that this episode blesses you all. And I hope that this gives you some aha moments and just sit down and just process. Even if you have to watch this more than one time, it may not be you that's dealing with the situation, but it could be someone. And just be open to be kind and ask questions. A lot of times when people have addictions, we can see family members or friends and know that different things are going on. We go over the house, we see them at the grocery store, just different things. Sometimes if you just open up the conversation to help somebody feel comfortable so that they
Mhm.
can talk to you, right? Suicide rates are sky high, anxiety, depression. There's so many
Yeah.
things going on, and there are so many women who are hurting and they feel like they're alone and that they don't have anybody to talk to. And if you feel that way, I want you to know that you are not alone, ladies. There are women out here who have went through the same things that you have went through, and they are still here. They are standing there, surviving. Not only surviving, they are thriving. There's life after the storm, ladies. You just have to keep going. Okay. Once again, I am Demira Virgil. I am your host for Kweenduhm Conversations podcast. This is a podcast where we empower women one podcast at a time. You can find me on Facebook. I have Queen Tribe. That is our group of women. We empower each other. I have Kweenduhm Conversations, and I'm also on Kweenduhm.com. The podcast is audio on all podcast platforms, and video is on YouTube. Thank you again, Krista, for coming on today. Ladies, you all be blessed. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.